Perfect.
How is it going, Bears fans? Welcome back to another episode of Beared Down Uncut, the show where we talk everything Bears every day of the week. Today, in episode number 178 of Uncut, we are back discussing a specific wide receiver prospect for the Chicago Bears in the upcoming 2022 NFL Draft next week. We are going to be talking about the 5'11", 184-pound Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. He is an intriguing wide receiver who might be in the Bears' lap when pick 39 rolls around. We're going to be discussing whether or not it is worth it for the Bears to draft him. Welcome back to the channel, though. We've got 9 straight days of draft coverage coming to you guys. Took a week off there, Easter week. Was super duper busy, so we apologize, but it does feel good to be back getting into the swing of things. We've got an NFL Draft live stream coming up for rounds 2 and 3 on April 29th, I believe that will be. So a lot in the books. We're going to get some special guests on this next week and bring you guys as much draft coverage as we can throughout these next 9 days. So if you want the most comprehensive Bears coverage on the web, do us a favor wherever you may be listening right now. Drop a like, subscribe, follow, and we're excited to bring you guys along for the journey before Ryan Poles makes his first picks as the Bears general manager. I am your host, Chris Malpe. Feels good to be back, joined with my co-host, Parth Shaw. Parth, White Sox and Cubs are getting underway here. Bulls started off in the playoffs with a rough one, but looking to bounce back here soon. A lot happened in this week that we took off, but feels good to be back, and the Bears are starting their voluntary mini camps today. So how are you doing, and what's going on?
I'm doing great. Like you said, baseball season's getting underway. Sadly, the White Sox today and yesterday, games got postponed due to rain or snow or whatever's going down in Cleveland. Like Joakim Noah said, who
wants to go to Cleveland?
Yeah, exactly. Who wants to go to Cleveland? Ain't nobody want to go there. But, that's been going on, so it's been tough. I do miss watching them. But like you said, the Bulls had a tough loss game 1. I thought they could have pulled that one out. But, DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, and Vucevic all had some pretty bad shooting nights. And
shot 21 for 71 collectively. You're not going to win games shooting like that.
You're not going to win, and especially when the Bulls don't get much scoring outside of those 3 guys, so they need to be efficient. And, I could talk about that game. That game was frustrating to watch as a fan, for sure. But like you said, the Bears are getting underway. And the draft is next week, so super stoked about that. A lot of big things that the Bears got to do in this draft.
Yeah, the particularly easy to remember Chicago playoff sting is most definitely back, but still feels good to have the Bulls back in the playoffs. And I don't think that series is going to be a walkover by any means for the Milwaukee Bucks. So hopefully the Bulls continue to put up a good fight, because they did a couple of nights ago, and I'm proud of them for that. But we are here to talk about the Bears. Good to see that their voluntary mini camps are getting underway. I believe they've got 5 tryouts today. They've got 61 players rostered currently. But we are here to talk about the NFL draft. It is, I believe, 8 or 9 days away. We are really 9 days away. We're excited to bring you guys a round 2 and 3 live stream on April the 29th. But we are here today to continue to go down the wide receiver rabbit hole. We're talking about Jahan Dotson out of Penn State, a very intriguing wide receiver prospect. In his best year with the Nittany Lions that came just last year in 2021, Dotson really exploded onto the scene. He had 91 receptions, 1,182 receiving yards, 13 yards per catch, and 12 touchdowns. So, Parth, this is one that you and I have kept our eyes on for quite some time. And as the board has continued to shake out throughout the last couple of weeks, it seems like Dotson could be there when Chicago is on the board. So I would love to see Jahan Dotson fall out of Penn State, fall to the Bears. I tweeted out earlier this morning, he's a shifty wideout with unbeatable speed. He's fully operational on all 3 levels of the field. Not to mention, he has some great athleticism and has a broad catch radius. So personally speaking, and we'll get to it in a couple of minutes, I think he's my top guy right now, even though he does come in at 5'11". But Parth, we see this Penn State wide receiver. He has route running that is smooth and can ramp up quickly up and down the field. I also think he has some ridiculous in-air athleticism for a guy under 6 feet tall. So taking a look at Jahan Dotson, specifically someone who we've really keyed in on as this draft process has continued to move closer and closer, how well do you think that he would fit in Chicago's offense?
I think he would fit really well in the Chicago Bear offense. Justin Fields is someone who likes to throw the ball quick, routine throws, motion throws, and Dotson fits really well with that scheme. They do that there at Penn State. Fields is comfortable at doing it at Ohio State, two different Big Ten schools right there. But I think he'd come in and fit really well with Justin. He'd complement Darnell Mooney and Byron Pringle really well. Those three would probably be the three fastest wide receiver group in the NFL. I feel like those three got some speed to take the tops off defenses. And Dotson is also really dangerous with the ball in his hands. If you can get the ball into his hands in space, he can take that thing 20, 30 extra yards. And the most important thing in today's game is yards after catch. And the Bears weren't good at that the last couple seasons. With a quarterback like Justin Fields, who thrives off of yards after catch like he did at Ohio State and off those deep balls, this guy, Jahan Dotson, would do really well with those two things.
Yeah, I got to go ahead and agree with you. I think you hit it completely on the head, Parth. Dotson is someone who has unparalleled speed, and wherever you get him the ball on the field, he's going to take off and do something special. A lot of people have been calling him a carbon copy of Darnell Mooney, which I can understand would be a little bit worrisome with Chicago potentially needing to look for a big play wide receiver. But Dotson showed the ability at Penn State to be able to make a lot of those big plays that Chicago is potentially looking for. So only can continue to add more speed on the field. I know the Nittany Lions like to use him in a lot of packages on jet sweeps and potentially handing it off to him in the backfield in 2021. And they saw a lot of success doing that. I believe he had one rushing touchdown as well last season in the Big Ten. So I think he would fit perfectly well in this Bears offense, especially under this new scheme with Luke Getsy and Matt Eberflus at the helm. But overall, I do think he would be a great fit for the Bears offense, and I think he's going to potentially be there right there when the Bears pick. Parth, in this last week and in these last couple of weeks, we've really seen the wide receiver board shake up a lot. Guys that we thought were going to be there for the Bears have moved down the board. Guys like George Pickens, as well as David Bell, looks like they could potentially move down to third-round talents at this point, which is really intriguing considering the Bears just picked up that 71st overall pick there. So I'm sure we'll talk about that third-round pick sometime later this week in our draft coverage, but that 71st pick is intriguing. But taking a look at the 39th pick for now, assuming the Bears are prioritizing the wide receiver position, are you pulling the trigger on Jahan Dotson if he falls to that spot?
Absolutely. The Bears desperately need a wide receiver. Poles said he would do it through the draft, and I think Jahan Dotson's a first-round talent. And if he falls to pick 39, I would definitely take him. He like we said earlier, he's got the speed, he's got the hands, and he can do it after the catch. And I think he fits really well in the offense that the Bears are going to try to create with Justin Fields and Luke Getsy. And he would be a dynamic duo with Darnell Mooney. And like Chris mentioned, we definitely will need a bigger wide receiver to come in and complement these two guys, as they are a little bit undersized. But at the end of the day, you can never go wrong with the guy who gets open and can get you yards. And I think that's what Jahan Dotson can do.
Yeah, if you take a look at the Bears' current depth chart, they might be a little bit understaffed at wide receiver and also undersized. I mean, you got Equanimeous St. Brown, Darnell Mooney, Byron Pringle, Daz Newsome. So I understand why a lot of Bears fans would prefer taking someone like an Alec Pierce, like a Christian Watson that's going to be there at 39. Watson, someone who the Bears have reportedly been interested in. I understand why people wouldn't want Dotson to be the pick, considering he may not be that true X receiver that Chicago's looking for, and maybe he doesn't fit in the offense perfectly well. That being said, I feel like I would take him in a heartbeat if he's available. I don't essentially know if that's going to be the case, but he brings so much talent to the field. The Bears have other assets that they can use still spending in free agency, and also have a lot more draft picks down the board, that I still think they can pick up potentially one or two more wide receivers this offseason to complement someone like a Darnell Mooney and potentially a Jahan Dotson. So if he does fall to 39, that is something I think I would be all for. If it depends on how the Bears assess their talent, but it seems like potentially some other potentially more traditional X wide receivers could be available. But I think Watson provides a lot of talent and could shine in Chicago. Parth, before we close this one off, let's talk a little bit about the Bears draft strategy overall, because this is important. The Bears have 3 picks spanning from 39 to 71 overall. You'd assume that they can find 2, potentially 3 starters within those 3 picks. They've got positions of need at cornerback position on the defensive side of the ball, but offensive line and wide receiver, obviously offensively. As we've established before, the goal this offseason was and should continue to be to build around Justin Fields, make him your franchise quarterback, do the best you can do to put him in a position to succeed. So I want to ask you, what do you think is more important taking a look at the Bears heading into this draft? They lost guys like James Daniels, Allen Robinson. What's more important for Justin Fields at this point, in your opinion? The protection and the offensive linemen up front, or the weapons and the receivers on the outside?
It's a tough question. Honestly, I'm going to have to go with weapons. I feel like Justin Fields' protection should be a lot better next year as these guys, play a little bit more snaps together. Larry Borum is someone who played really well in his time at right tackle. Tevin Jenkins, we didn't get to see much out of him, and when he was in, he struggled at times. But it'll take some time to get used to that left tackle position. It's a tough position to play. And he also can play right tackle. We know Borum can play right guard. So there's a lot of guys on our offensive line that can play all over the place. The Bears signed Lucas. Is it Lucas or Tim Patrick? I think it's Tim Patrick from the
Lucas
Packers.
Patrick, I believe.
Patrick. Okay.
Lucas Patrick.
Yeah, Tim Patrick's a wide receiver.
Lucas for the Denver Broncos, yes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so Lucas Patrick, he's someone who's played all over the offensive line for the Packers. So the guys that the Bears have on offensive line currently can play multiple positions, and like I said, I really like that. And they should still target guys like that through the draft. But right now, that wide receiver room looks a little bit weak to me, with Darnell Mooney as your number 1 wide receiver, and then there's a quick drop off to guys like Byron Pringle and Daz Newsome and St. Brown, who didn't do much with the Green Bay Packers. So I would love to see the Bears bring in a couple wide receivers for sure. I think Fields needs some talent to throw to and guys that he can develop relationships with, and no better way to do it with some rookie wide receivers.
I think Byron Pringle is actually someone who could come in and surprise us. We saw how talented that Kansas City wide receiver room was for years, and Pringle still put up some solid numbers and made some solid contributions for that Super Bowl winning team, as well as for the next couple of years after. But Parth, I agree. This is a really tough question. Ryan Poles said when he was hired that he was going to build this team through the draft and build it around Justin Fields. I'm going to go ahead and say I think protection and weapons are equally as important heading into this draft. I think ideally, you and I could probably agree, Parth, that with the 2 second-round picks the Bears have, they've got to prioritize both a wide receiver and an offensive lineman. I do think there's need there at the cornerback position. I'm not sure if Kindle Vildor and Thomas Graham Jr. could be the answer there. But the Bears added, I forget, a cornerback from the Ravens a couple of days ago. I think Tavon Young is his name, who, if healthy, could step in and play some good football. Thomas Graham Jr., even though we haven't seen much of him, still has some very solid potential. So maybe if the Bears go wide receiver and then wide receiver, offensive lineman, and then cornerback with 71, that could be the best potential strategy. But I think these positions are equally important. And I also think if a certain batch of players falls out of the first round, maybe the Bears reach and try and move up and grab one of these guys that can help Justin Fields. The two, one at each position on my mind that stands out is Tyler Lindenbaum out of Iowa on the offensive line. I think he's the most elusive offensive lineman in this draft and could prove to be equally as important to it, the Bears, like Creed Humphrey was for the Kansas City Chiefs last year. So Ryan Poles knows a lot about trading up for offensive linemen. And then obviously another name, even though it's unlikely, you got to keep your eye on, is Chris Olave. I think you don't bat an eye if he falls down to the second round and you try and move up and get him by any means whatsoever. So improving around Justin Fields is going to continue to be the name of the game as we move forward in this 2022 NFL draft. And bringing in someone like Jahan Dotson, continuing to prioritize both protection and weapons moving forward is going to be important for the Bears. So thank you guys so much for tuning into episode number 178 of Uncut. If you want more Bears content, do us a favor, drop a like, subscribe, follow. We are going to do our best to bring you guys a new video/podcast each and every day up until the start of the 2022 NFL Draft. If you want more content from us outside of this, head to our website. The link is in our bio, bearddown.com. You can see content articles. You can see more content from us, including columns, articles, and blogs from a couple of our writers as we get closer to draft day. If you would like to find the podcast on social media, you can find it on Instagram and Twitter at Beared Down. And finally, you can find the links to all of our personal social media pages down in the description for myself as well as Parth and the rest of our team, a tad bit rusty after about an 8-day break. But be sure to check out our personal social media pages. You can see our thoughts on all things Bears, the entirety of the National Football League, as well as all of Chicago sports as things continue to heat up. So Parth Shaw, feels good to be back behind the mic here. We're getting closer and closer to the draft, which means we're getting closer and closer to training camp, which means we're getting closer and closer to the preseason and closer to the start of the 2022-2023 Bears regular season. A lot to look forward to in these coming days, but any last words before we sign off here?
Yeah, a lot to look forward to. The NFL draft is coming soon. We're going to start making our mock draft videos this week and come out with a couple before the NFL draft. Super excited to make those. I always love to make some predictions on where the Bears will go, especially with the new regime who hasn't done much during free agency. Is definitely going to have to make some splash moves during the draft. So excited for this draft for sure.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. And I think we're hoping to get 2 or 3 mock drafts out in this next week before the draft gets underway. So once again, a lot to look forward to. So many which ways the Bears can go in this draft. Definitely can add some starting potential players and some good talent around Justin Fields and the entirety of the team as the Bears look to stay afloat in 2022. Should be interesting to see how the rest of this week pans out leading to draft week and the rest of the entire offseason. We got you guys covered. So it's been a pleasure to be your host. Once again, my name is Chris Malpe. More draft coverage coming the entire week into next week with a second and third round live stream coming on April 29th. We have a lot to look forward to. But once again, it's been an absolute pleasure. And Bears fans, as always, do us a favor and stay safe and bear down. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.